Relax.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in true producer style, I have a clock here because we're gonna be on time.
Can you produce our Black and Vision Summit?
I am a little overwhelmed at the moment.
I know. How are you guys feeling?
Ready.
Yeah.
Easiest way. All right, it's 11 o'clock here. We're gonna wait a few more minutes here to let everyone gather in before we start our program. And by a few minutes, I mean 30 seconds. So we will wait for everyone to get in. You are attending the NADIS Career Day for 2022. I know we got a lot of students in from college and high school. We're excited to have you join us to hear some top professionals speak about their career path, but also give some advice. Please feel free to add some questions into the chat as we go. We will take questions at the end of the panel, so around that 12:30 mark. Okay, we're gonna get started. My name is Alicia Owusu. I am the one of the heads of the workshop committee for the NADIS Board of Governors here. This is the Chicago Midwest chapter of the Emmys. Joining me today are a group of wonderful professionals who are really excited to share their journeys with you, but also to answer some questions. Moderating today's event is Brendon Pope. He is the CW26 and host of the new show On the Block, premiering this Thursday on the U. He will be moderating today's discussion. Brendon is also the president of the National Association of Black Journalists Chicago chapter, NABJ, for those of you who are familiar with the acronym. He will take it from here. Thanks, Brendon.
You're muted, Brandon.
Unmuted. We've been doing this for 2 years.
We've been doing how long now, and I fell for it.
You're used to those big studios, that's why.
It's gotta be. But hey, shaking off the Zoom rust, we back in this. Excited to see everybody here and to be a part of this amazing panel. You know, the exciting thing about being a student is it's a time of discovery. You get a chance to ask questions and hear from some of the best. So we got two of the best right here. I'm talking about Courtney Hall and Matt Rodrigues, the host of NBC Chicago Today. How you two doing today?
Great to be here, Brandon.
Good morning, Matt.
Good morning. Good? I'm good. I'm sorry I'm in my car. I couldn't make it home in time, but I'm rolled up in some random bank. Maybe someone will give me.
Typical Saturday errands. It's all good.
Exactly.
Yeah. We appreciate taking some time, nonetheless, to do this. We really appreciate it. So I'll just start by asking you guys to kind of rewind and tell us from the beginning. I'll start with you, Courtney. How did you get your start in this TV industry?
Well, you know, after college, I was like a lot of students who just don't know what to do. I wasn't really passionate about anything, to tell you the truth. So I was kind of going from job to job doing like process of elimination, like, well, that sucks. So, you know, what do I want to do? And what I realized is I really wanted something where I felt my impact. A lot of companies I was working for, I had gotten my degree in business and in marketing, and a lot of the big companies I was working for, I felt so small in this huge company, and I didn't really feel my impact. And so one thing I thought about is, like, I was in college when 9/11 happened, and I was glued to the TV, and, you know, as everybody was, you know, the world was glued to the TV, but I really felt the importance of journalism, specifically television journalism. And kind of after I graduated, I thought back to that. I'm like, well, that's kind of cool because I can actually see what they do, as opposed to being just, and office work is great, whatever, it just wasn't for me. You know, I couldn't feel that impact, but I could actually see what journalists did. And that is what really appealed to me. So I went to grad school. I got my journalism degree, which I don't think that that's necessary if you start out knowing that you want to be a journalist and if you have internships, but I had no idea. So I was doing a career switch. And that's why I felt like I needed to get some sort of basis in journalism. And from there, I started out in producing, and I wanted to meld my business degree with journalism. So I started doing business journalism, and then I realized that was like super dry, in my opinion. So I also got some advice that if any part of me wants to be on air, I should do it immediately while I'm young. So that's why I moved to a small market, and I started on air from there.
Awesome. I forgot to give you guys his bio, so let me do that real quick. So everyone understands, the amazing resumes of these people here. Courtney Hall is Emmy nominated. She's a host and producer at NBC Chicago lifestyle show, Chicago Today. Born and raised in Chicago, she previously worked as an anchor for nearly a decade at WGN Morning News and CLTV. Her other past work includes being a news anchor and features reporter in Orlando, Florida, a producer for Bloomberg News in New York City, and one of the in-arena hosts for the Chicago Bulls, who are now playoff bound. Courtney also graduated with a Bachelor's of Science degree from Georgetown University, the Hoyas, and received her master's from the Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern University. And then Matt Rodrigues here, he's an Emmy-nominated host and producer for NBC Chicago Lifestyle, so Chicago Today, a native of Portsmouth, Rhode Island. He previously worked as a host and producer with the pop culture website called Pop Sugar for 5 years and hosted their national entertainment show, Pop Sugar Now. He's also worked with CBS's The Talk, Wanderlust, Cirque du Soleil, Hotel Tonight, The View, you name it, Matt has been there.
Yeah.
So Matt, how did you get your start in this TV news game?
Well, it's funny because Courtney and I, our paths are so different, but also similar in that I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm only good, in high school, I just found that I was good at being on stage and being in front of people. I was very active in student government, and I wanted to do everything that didn't involve doing real work, like homework and actual papers and stuff. So I eventually decided to pursue acting, and I went to Marymount Manhattan College in New York City. And I went to acting school. I graduated with a BFA in theater arts and minor in musical theater. And when I graduated, I was asked to be class speaker at the graduation. So it's at Lincoln Center, awesome situation. And I gave my speech, and it went over well. It was entertaining. If I say so myself, like the crowd responded quite well. And after that, I outside of Lincoln Center, my teachers came up to me. My acting teachers kind of came up in a pack, and they were like, why didn't you ever do that in class? And I was like, what? They were like, be like that. And I was like, well, you never asked me to be me. So that was kind of a light bulb that went off at that point. And I realized I was much better at being myself than pretending to be somebody else. And then I was like, it took a little while. It took a couple of years for me to figure out how to do that. And with the onset of YouTube, I had just moved to LA. I decided to move to LA, and YouTube really allowed me to kind of dabble in this world and not get paid. And, someone was doing a red carpet, and they let me go on for free. I paid for my own photographer, my own camera, but they were like, go on there and do your thing. And that footage led to another gig that I put on Facebook. I put a video on Facebook, and somebody saw that, and they're like, why don't you do this? So I was doing stuff for free. I was trying to do any other job to pay the bills, but I was like, this is what I got to do. And eventually that led to some paid gigs, a company called AOL for the dinosaurs out there. You might remember that. And they did a travel series, and that was my first paid gig. And I traveled all around the country and went to restaurants and showed people how to get around. And then from there, I got Pop Sugar, and that grew. And so it's just been an incredible journey that's led me to so many different places. Never wanted to do hard news. Never saw that as my vision. I was always lifestyle, celebrity entertainment, food, fashion, travel. Those are my passions. And I've been lucky enough to be able to do it, and lucky enough to be able to team up with Courtney in these last crazy years. We kept the show moving and running, and I was so grateful to have a job that showcased what we do and what Chicago is best at during a time that was so dark for so many people. We were a little bit of light in their day, hopefully.
Yes, NBC Chicago Today. The two of you do an outstanding job as hosts, and you really do bring some brightness to people's day. What is a typical day like being the host of this show? Because we all know the TV world seems glamorous on the outside, but like behind the scenes, it takes a lot of work.
Yeah,
Matt,
Courtney, I'll let you start.
You want me to start?
No, by all means.
Okay, so glamorous it is not. There are moments of glamour, and I definitely lean into those. Yes, there's clothes, and you get invited to stuff for free, and sometimes you get some stuff, some makeup or some, but it's a lot of hard work. I think a typical week, it's easier for us to do a typical week because days change, but a typical week for us, we shoot our show in studio twice a week, and we shoot multiple shows while we're in this studio. We then might have one day during the week where we do shoots in the field, whereas we go out to a restaurant or a coffee spot or a bar or wherever it is. We go out and we shoot out there. And then the other 2 days, we are doing behind the scenes work. It's editing, it's booking the show, producing, writing. That is by no means typical, but we are a startup, very much a startup where everybody does everything. Matt, you want to?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly it. We are in a situation where there's not a thing that we don't touch on the show, almost really not a thing, which is great. And that Courtney and I have a lot of opinions. So we feel that we can voice those opinions because we're so involved. And I do love that.
I was going to say, I feel extra empowered to voice those opinions because we are doing everything. So I'm going to comment on everything from the lighting to the carpeting.
Yeah.
And I have.
And I think in these last 2 years, especially because, everyone was, I think, more hands-on with the pandemic, but we've learned a lot, and I'm super grateful to have all of those skills. To be sometimes the producer credit I'm just as proud of as the hosting credit. And if you had asked me 2-3 years ago if I wanted to be a producer, like, no, I just want to be on camera. That's all I want to do. And now I have a real appreciation for the inner workings of a show and what goes into it. And I now have the knowledge to point out if there's an issue. I know how to fix things so I can address that. So that's a great skill. Sometimes I wish I had more time to just focus on the hosting part of it, because when you're so involved with all the other organizational parts, Brandon, I'm sure you've been in that situation as well. You don't get the time that you'd like to, to study and learn about a guest, or really be informed about where you're going and what you're interviewing someone about. And most times we're reading a script right before the interview, and that's just the way it is. You read it and you're like, okay, what are we talking about? Let's go. Boop, lights on, let's do it. And try to make it fun in the moment and try to get that information out of them best you can.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a lot of work that people don't see behind the scenes. So I appreciate you two kind of painting that picture for us. We're running out of time here, but before we go, I'd love to hear from you two. Obviously entertainment and lifestyle, it is extremely, extremely competitive, and it's getting smaller and smaller and tighter and tighter. So what should students be doing right now to set themselves apart if they want to get into entertainment and lifestyle?
Court, are you on this?
I'll start. I mean, I would say just if you could do one thing a day, or one thing a day to get you closer to where you want to be, whether it's talking to an entertainment and lifestyle host or talking to a producer, scheduling a lunch. I think those little things help. I think on a bigger scale, if they find themselves working in their general assignment reporters, if they could fight to do one story a month or one story every 2 weeks that is lighter, they're going to have to pitch that themselves, because in the news organizations, they're going to just send you where they need you to go. But if you pitch a story that's good and that's more lifestyle-y. Basically, news organizations are hungry for that type of feel-good news. They just don't have the bandwidth oftentimes to go pursue it. So I think it's going to take, the work of somebody who wants to be in it to go and seek out those stories and then build your reel from there.
And I have a bit of a different perspective from that, because I very much was just me on my own at home in the beginning. And I say, take every opportunity you can to put yourself on camera. We have the power of TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and all of that social media brings. So you can be practicing interviewing people and highlighting food or whatever kind of lifestyle world you want to be in immediately. And you can be putting it out there immediately. And you can be learning how to edit immediately. So there's no excuse for you not to have some kind of example to show other people. And you can build that and grow that. I've never been one to want to do that just alone. Like the isolation of being quote unquote an influencer is not as fun to me. I like the collaboration and working with the team and relying on help and getting healthcare and that kind of stuff, So you have access to so many opportunities now that can help build a reel. So take advantage of that and show off what you're doing. Even if it's not your best, show it off, learn from it, take notes, and go to the next thing and learn from that.
That's another thing. Like when you're doing that, I totally agree with what Matt said. You have to have this balance. You have to be insanely supportive and confident in yourself enough to show your work and believe that you could do it and believe that you can learn. But at the same time, you've got to be humble enough to accept. So it's a balance.
It is ongoing and it never goes away, right, Brandon?
It never goes away.
Never.
No, I know exactly
always
what you
learning.
mean.
Yeah.
You always have to be a student of the game because you're never a finished product. And you two are some of the best professors we could have today. So we appreciate you so much. Thank you for joining us. And please stick around because we'll have questions for you from our students afterward. Thanks a lot, y'all.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Next up, we're going to bring in Mike Hall from Big Ten Network. You see him if you're a big sports fan over there. What's up, Mike?
Hi, how are you, Brandon?
Hey, good to see you, man. You got the B1G logo flashing there nicely. I'm an Ohio State fan myself, so I've been watching you for a while since the network started. So I'm going to give your bio real quick so people can get a chance to know a little bit about you. So Mike, he was the winner of the first season of ESPN's reality TV show called Dream Job. That was back in 2004. He spent 3 years as an anchor with ESPN. He's a Glen Ellen native. He worked at SportsCenter, ESPN News anchoring. In 2005, he was named ESPNU's first lead anchor, hosting the network's studio shows, including all the pregame, halftime, and postgame shows for football and men's basketball. He was also the signature anchor for ESPNU's National Signing Day coverage. He's a grad of Mizzou School of Journalism at the University of Missouri in Columbia. It's one of the oldest formal journalism schools in the world, the Mizzou Mafia, as they call it. Mike, great to see you, man. So this sports journalism journey, when did it become something you envisioned for your life?
When I was in high school, I wanted to be an actor, and I was in musicals and choir and theater and speech team and all that stuff. And when it got to my junior year, I remember my dad saying well, if you're going to do this, you need to research the hell out of it to know what you're getting into. And I remember at one point, someone important saying, be an actor if it's the only thing you can be. And I remember being no, I can do other things, but what do I want to do? And I woke up in the morning and would watch SportsCenter every morning with Stuart Scott and Rich Eisen and Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann. And I was well, that's performing. It's not acting, but it's performing. What do I have to do for that? And it was well, for that, you need a journalism degree and then you need some luck. And so I was well, what's the best journalism school I can do? And that's Mizzou. And so it really kind of started as a junior, senior in high school, and it grew from there.
So you're part of this reality TV show competition. That's not the typical start of a sports journalist journey. What was that experience like for you, and how did you kind of leverage that and propel you from there to what you do now?
Brandon, I just recommend everyone win a game show. You know, the easiest pathway to just jump all these steps. It was insane, man. I mean, it was a while ago. So for those who are maybe not even born when it happened in 2004, it was American Idol, but for sportscasters. It was every week, a bunch of people did a thing that was a sports related task, like, you know, interview an athlete or put together a package or read a highlight or yada, yada, yada. And then judges voted you off and America voted you off. And then when it got down to the final four, it got really serious. And it was insane because every week I was a senior in college and I would be flown out to New York City and would do the show on a Sunday night and then go back to being a college student. The you know, Monday afternoon, I get back on campus. And so it was bizarre and it was really fun. And I made some great friendships and it was a cool opportunity that almost no one alive gets to have. And so I'm very appreciative of it. And then I won and it was kind of insane. You know, like the day after I did a national media blitz and, you know, Billy Bush is interviewing me and Anderson Cooper is interviewing me and I'm doing all this stuff and it's wild. And the second day after I win, I have an early morning meeting with the executives, the upper tier of the ESPN power people. And they go, when can you start? And I was like, I got 6 weeks left to graduate college. Can I do that? And luckily they were like, yeah, start June 1st. So I got to go back to school, graduate, and then I had a job lined up. And my first job was at SportsCenter, which was just unbelievable. And it was a great training ground because I personally believe most people, maybe not most people, but a lot of people, and I'm one of those people, you rise to your level. So if you're seeing people around you who are excellent at your job, consciously and subconsciously, you're like, okay, that's where the bar is. Then I have to get there. And so for me to be surrounded by as good as you can find in the industry when I was only 22, just naturally forced me to get better.
Now we see you on Big Ten Network now, especially during college football season, doing the pregame, halftime, post games, doing Big Ten Tonight. What goes into a production like that? Over the years, we've seen the quality and the scope and the level of it really go up. What's that typical production like for you?
Almost every show is different. It depends on the time of day, the time of year, the sport we're covering. So for example, if it's a football pregame show, that's a huge deal. There might be Zoom meetings or phone calls on a Tuesday and a Thursday before the show on a Saturday with producers pitching ideas. If it's a regular show, just like, you know, like last night I was on with a post-game show after a sporting event. Well, that might be an email from the producer the night before or a show meeting 8 hours before where you pitch ideas and you go over what you think is important and what they think is important. I might be told there's an interview that's lined up. So it might be, okay, the Nebraska football coach is at 5:15, you're going to interview him. So then I start immediately doing research on what questions do I find interesting for that. A producer will put in a rundown in a shared computer program that we all have, and I will know certain things I have to write. The open to the show, the bumps going to break, if there's a graphic that I need to write to, if there's an on camera that I need to do a lead into, I'll start writing those things. And then, you know, like everyone else sort of said, you shove in food when you get a chance and you slap on some makeup and then you go do the show and hope you don't get fired for saying anything inappropriate.
Yeah, that's always my concern when I'm on TV. That's everyone's concern. My boss is concerned. Like, okay, what's Brandon going to say? Let's hold our breath. That's really awesome, man. I'm curious when we talk about, you know, this production and what you're doing. You mentioned interviewing and questions. What goes into your thought process in forming your questions? Because when we see press conferences for a lot of, you know, sports things, you get the typical, tell me about this. How was the game last night? Blah, blah, blah. How do you stand out with your questions?
A couple ways. I've learned a lot. I've worked really hard on interviewing. Almost the worst thing you can do, especially if you're young, the worst thing you can do is ask a 30-second or longer question. Shut up. It's not about you. Think about it as input, output. When you're writing an on camera, you are outputting. When you are writing and open to a show, you are outputting. When you're reading a highlight, you are outputting. An interview is about inputting. It is not about you. So the shorter the question, the better the answer almost always works. The worst things, you will see it from national people too. You will see it like, Coach, in that first half, your team shot 48% from the field. And of course, Johnson got injured at one point, and you said pregame that you wanted to try to box out their big men a little bit better. You know, what's your motivation? You're like, what are you doing? Like, shut up. I've been in the moments and I've done those questions, Brandon, and you quickly realize, God, I'm stupid. It's an insecurity. It's you trying to prove you're smart. You're trying to prove to the coach, you're trying to prove to the viewer you're smart. Guess what? You wouldn't have your job if you weren't already good and if you weren't already smart. So don't prove it to anyone. Just get right to the question. Sometimes you need to say something like, Coach, you mentioned pregame, you were worried about 3-point shooting. Sure enough, it's been a struggle in the first half. Why? But that's like 8 seconds. Like, you don't need to make it about you. So that's something I really try to do, Brandon, is make sure that I'm not asking long questions. The other thing is, me personally, what I think I do that stands out from other people is when it's appropriate, because certain venues are not, and certain questions and topics are not, but when it's appropriate, I want to get personality. Like, I don't just want the X and O's. Like, I think Dan Patrick is the best sports interviewer in the country, because even when he doesn't know someone, it sounds like they're longtime buddies that are chatting and catching up over a beer. And that's a great North Star to lean on. The more you can loosen someone up, I'll give you an example. There's the Michigan State head coach. His name is Mel Tucker. He's new to the job. And every time I've interviewed him, it's awesome. Like, with full on not humble brag, right? I've gotten great interviews from him. He gives awful interviews to a lot of people. They are boring, they're short answered. And one of his colleagues said to me once, he was like, you always loosen him up with your first question. You get him in a comfortable zone, and then the rest of the interview, it just blossoms in front. And like, listen, I'm not perfect and I screw up a lot of times, but the more that I can try to do that early on, and the more you can build relationships with someone, that allows those interviews to not be black and white and boring, and to show some personality of the person.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. I relate to hearing these questions. I'm just like, oh my God. 3 parts. First of all, Coach, like,
Brutal.
You got to get right to it, and you got to loosen them up. That's what it's all about, man. We're running out of time here, but I want to make sure I get your take on this. Sports, super competitive. I tried to be in the sports industry myself. What should students be doing to stand out? When you see somebody on camera, what makes them pop out to you?
So I believe it doesn't have to be just sports. A large part of it is what you do, and a large part of it is what you don't do, right? Don't make mistakes on name pronunciations. Don't make mistakes on factual errors. You have to be, no matter how hard you're working in prep, I guarantee you can work a little harder on it to make sure that you don't make mistakes, because you could be Bob Costas at age 27 and about to be hired by NBC. But if you come on camera and say, hey, the Blackhawks player, Jonathan Toews, like, that guy, whoever's going to hire you is going to be like, nope, he doesn't know how to say Taves, I'm out. So you got to be very careful. You know how to say names, and you get your facts right. That's sort of a baseline. The next thing is, I think, to your best of your ability, try to find your voice, try to find what you're good at. My mentor was a guy named John Anderson. He's still a Sports Center anchor now. And his thing was writing. He was as good a writer as you can get. And so he leaned into that. And some people aren't funny. He works with people like Steve Levy, is a guy who is actually very funny, but on camera, he's not a joke maker. But he didn't make his career by doing that. He made his career by being likable. He leaned into being likable on camera. There's some people, like I mentioned, Keith Olbermann. Keith Olbermann's just smarter than you and me. Like, some people don't like his politics and they don't like his attitude, and that's perfectly fine. But like, he knows how to bring what he has that's special on air. And all those people I've mentioned have too. So find what it is that you do. Are you likable? Are you funny? Are you a good writer? Are you informed? And lean into that, because whatever your thing, whatever your voice is going to make you special and stand out.
Absolutely. Mike, we got time for one more question here. What would you say is one of the biggest things you've learned through your career, or something that you wish somebody would have told you before you got into the sports media career?
That is something I've recently come to grips with, Brandon, is it's not good enough to just be good enough at your job. I wish I spent more time day one building relationships with the people I covered, with the people I worked with my bosses. Now, that doesn't mean I'm someone who doesn't have friendships in the industry. I absolutely do. But I have seen, now that I just turned 40, and I've seen people who've been in the industry a long time, and they still have deep ties, and they check in every month with certain people. And it's not just a selfish thing of, well, I might need their contact, but it's a great thing to do. I've done that with my friends and the people that I've become buddies with, but I've seen the advantages of, you know, the more people that you cover on a day-to-day basis or that you work with, if you can try to build those relationships. When you have a coach, yes, of course, you don't have to be buddies with everybody, but if they know that you have a relationship with them outside of just sticking a microphone in their face, that can help. And when a job comes up somewhere else, and when someone sees you, when someone mentions something new, the more you can try to build relationships, that is at least a third of your job. So if I could start my career over again, I would still work just as hard as I did on trying to be good at my job, but I would also work a little harder on peripheral relationships and trying to make sure that I let them grow.
Yeah, that's across the board. It's a relationship business, no doubt. No doubt. Mike, thanks a lot for your time. We're going to see you at the end of this for some student questions as well. Thanks a lot, man.
You bet, bud.
I want to remind all the students here for this amazing panel, you can ask questions in our Q&A section after we get done talking to our panelists here for a little bit. So make sure you stay around for that last half hour of the program. Next up, we've got Alicia Roman from NBC, a meteorologist over there. She's going to be popping up here in a second. And there she is. Hey there.
Hi.
Good to see you. Let me read your bio real quick so everybody gets a good picture of who you are. So Alicia Roman, if you haven't seen her on TV, she's a meteorologist at NBC Chicago, born and raised in Western Pennsylvania in a small town just north of Pittsburgh. Are you a Steelers fan, Alicia?
Oh, yeah.
Oh boy. I lean more towards the Browns myself, but hey, I know, but hey, I respect it. She first had her first job at WHIZ-TV in Zanesville, Ohio. She also worked at WIS-TV in Columbia, South Carolina, and most recently worked at Wish TV in Indianapolis as a weekend evening meteorologist. She graduated from Penn State University, where she studied broadcast journalism, and Mississippi State University, where she studied broadcast meteorology, a pretty good school for it. She's a member of the American Meteorological Society, if I can say my words right.
It's hard to say.
And in September 2009, she was awarded the AMS Seal of Approval. Alicia, great to speak with you today. How you feeling?
I feel all right. I feel good. I'm happy to be here, 5 months pregnant and ready to go.
Congratulations. That's really exciting. We appreciate you even more for spending some time with us during that. So meteorology, it's not one of those typical careers that, kids identify right away as things they want to get into. How did that become a passion of yours?
It's a very interesting story. And just really quickly, when I told my grandmother I wanted to be a meteorologist, she's like, how are you going to study meteors? They're out in space. And I'm like, no, that's not what it is. So my dad worked construction. So back in Western Pennsylvania, and typical here too, if you're working construction, you have to watch the weather because they're not going to be out working on roads and stuff when it's raining. So the Weather Channel started in 1982. So I'm dating myself a little bit. But my dad would wake up in the mornings and he would watch the Weather Channel, and I was a daddy's girl and I woke up with him too. I would lay on the couch with him. We would watch the Weather Channel and he would explain. My dad was a novice. He was just a very amateur weather enthusiast. So he would explain things to me. And mind you, I'm like 3, 4, 5, probably more like 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. And he would explain the radar to me. He would explain thunderstorms to me. So this was a thing that, my dad and I bonded with. We would just watch the Weather Channel, and we would watch our local news too, the weather on the local news. And it just kind of evolved to this, fun little thing that my dad and I had, where when there was a thunderstorm, we would go out on our porch and we'd watch the thunderstorms, and I'd ask him questions. And if he didn't know, we'd run inside and put on the Weather Channel and try to see when they would, detail our area. And he would talk to me about that. So over the years, I just, kind of was reading books about it. And then my dad was telling me about it. And I remember one day I was about 7 or 8, and I was riding my bike, and it was summertime. And it was one of those storms. And I know a lot of times we say isolated or scattered. And so sometimes it frustrates me when people don't understand that, because I figured it out when I was 8 years old. So I was riding my bike. I was riding my bike down the street. Okay. So it's a sunny day and you have those clouds that are dark and you have some rain. I was riding my bike and it was dry. Then I rode underneath a cloud. I looked up and it was raining on me. And I rode out of the cloud and I looked up and it wasn't raining. So I kind of did that back and forth about 10 times. And I was like, wow, that's probably what they mean when they say isolated or scattered. Ran home and I ran and told my dad, I'm like, Dad, is that what, the meteorologists mean when they say isolated storm or scattered storm? And he's like, yes, exactly. That's exactly what they mean. So again, we went to the Weather Channel, we looked at the radar and we saw that there was little green blips right over our county. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is so interesting. This is so fun. Another little part of it, I was kind of scared of thunderstorms. I hated the sound of thunder. And my dad would always tell me, it's okay. It's just basically heat from the lightning bolt rushing through the sky and it's making that sound. And I was like, I don't think so. I think it's God upstairs bowling, So he would try to explain to me, it's okay. It's nothing to be scared of. And so I just wanted to know the dynamics of a thunderstorm. Like, why did it do that? Why did we have, why are some thunderstorms, like we have severe weather? Why some, just all the whys. So that's how it got started for me, very, very young. And a lot of times when you talk to meteorologists, it starts very young. It's like, it's really random. I don't know how it happened. I mean, I know how it happened, but it's just something I've always wanted to do it. It was the only thing I ever wanted to do. If I wasn't a meteorologist, I don't know what I would be doing right now.
Yeah. And that means you love it. I mean, that's what the passion is all about. So that first job in Zanesville, Ohio.
Do you know the market?
Yeah. I know a little bit about Zanesville. What did you learn most from that first job experience?
Very humble beginnings, because I think a lot of people look at us in TV and they think, oh, it's so glamorous. They make so much money. They have this, they have that. No. Zanesville, Ohio, my first job, market 203 out of 210. And I'm not lying. I made $14,500. It was way, I mean, it's low, I think, and that's entry level. And it was the worst ever. I mean, they paid us very, very little. I was still, my parents were like, oh, yes, you got a job. But I was still relying on my parents to help me because it just wasn't, a lot of money. And I was like, all right, well, this is what I want to do. And I know I worked with a lot of people in Zanesville who quickly got out of the business because it just wasn't, the finances weren't there. It just wasn't, and then you get really nervous. Like my next job, I have to move. And that's the other thing, you're moving. At least Zanesville was close to Pittsburgh. I'm from right around Pittsburgh. So it was only 2.5 hours away. So it was very easy. But I worked with many people who are from New York and they started in Boise, Idaho. Even when I was applying for jobs, my mom was like, I don't even know where some of these places are that you're applying to. So I was very fortunate that I got a job in Zanesville, Ohio. I was there for 11 months and it was very humbling. It was very humbling. I did research and I, did meteorology and journalism. But when I got to Zanesville, I wasn't just a meteorologist. I was doing journalism. And I remember one day, because I did weekend weather for a couple weeks before I got moved to weekdays there. One day I was doing 4 stories. And I was like, this is not what I do. This is not what I want to do weather. And I'm sitting here I'm turning, 4 different stories because it's a small market for the afternoon evening news. And I remember I was so anxious. I broke a heel because not only did we have to do news, that's a radio station. It's a radio station too. So we had to turn it to radio too. And I was running around. I broke a heel. I sat down at the end of the day and I'm like, is this what I want to do? I'm doing weather, not as often as I want to do it. I just turned 4 stories into TV and radio, and I'm not making a whole lot of money. And I remember having a conversation with my dad, and he was like, and he told me the story that I just told you, about how, how I got into it, how I loved it. And so I I pressed on. I kept going. I went to Columbia, South Carolina. After that, I spent 2.5 years there, one of the hottest summers on record there. I had to get out. I came back north, went to Indianapolis, and I'm still here. And I don't think I ever would stop. I'm happy that I had that day that just, wore on me. And I just, I kept going because I knew it was going to get better. So
Yeah.
I was never discouraged. I was, but then I just kept pressing on.
That's where the passion gets tested in those moments, those small market moments, those first job moments where you're just like, yo, do I need to be doing this right now? Do I want to be doing this right now?
And I work with a lot of people who in that first market have been out of TV, and even the second market I went to, a lot of those guys got out of TV. And it's like, I feel like I'm like the last woman standing from some of my first friends in this business,
Yeah, I can relate to that from my small market. A lot of those people, they had the same feeling. I understand completely. But hey, we pressed on, we lowered the shoulder, we got through. So now you're here in Chicago. We see you on NBC. Weather is a different beast than what we see with the other jobs in TV. What goes into a typical weather report that you do?
So it's basically like doing a PowerPoint presentation every day of my life. You come in, you have to do your research. You just can't get in front of the TV. So I'm in work way before the anchors and, the traffic and the reporters, I'm in there probably for my shift, 2 a.m. So I wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning. Yay.
What?
Oh yeah. For the morning news. So I get to work at about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I do about a half hour to 45 minutes of research. So after I do my research, I write everything down and then I take my notes and then I have to build everything. So I'm, doing this all by myself. So I do my research. I have to put it in the computer program. I build it and then I present it. But Chicago is very interesting. And I've worked in a lot of very interesting weather markets. Pennsylvania is very mountainous. And we have kind of a little bit of lake from Lake Erie. We do get a little bit of lake effect snow in certain portions of Western Pennsylvania. Then I went to the south, to Columbia, South Carolina. You have the ocean influence and you have the mountain range. So, and Columbia was below sea level. So it was just chaotic there. Indianapolis was kind of okay, but then you come to Chicago and you have the lake. Everything is centered by that lake. And then not only that, but there's a lot of farmland, outside of the, Chicago suburbs and stuff. You go far west, you go far south, you have a lot of farmland, so a lot of vegetation. So it's very interesting. I've been here 10.5 years and I'm still learning and I'm still, just that lake, man. Sometimes it does some good things. And when new people come to the station, I'm just like, listen, it's the weather here is crazy, but it's so fun. I don't think I could do weather in California, even though it's easy and simple. I like a challenge. I like waking up in the morning and trying to figure out how much snow some of you are going to get or how much snow some of you are not going to get, because sometimes that happens. But it's a challenge and it's fun. It's fun. I mean, those things are fun. Severe weather is not fun, but forecasting snow and lake effect snow, it's really challenging, but it's really fun too.
I love that you said you're still learning. I think I think it's important for students to hear. We've heard that from all the panelists so far. Yeah, we've got our jobs and they look fancy on the outside, but we are still actively immersive and students of the game, because that's what you got to do. You got to constantly be working at your craft.
And we're really, now because everybody, the big thing now is, well, I can get my weather on the phone. Why do I need you? Well, we can zone into specific areas, in Chicago, whereas those app, phones, the weather apps on your phone, sometimes they're a little off, if you've noticed. But I can get as precise as possible. That's why, don't always trust the apps unless it's the, NBC Chicago 5 weather app.
Oh, good plug right there. Good plug. Now, one thing that also makes your job different than what we see typically on TV, you got a big giant green screen. Yeah. How long did it take you to get used to operating with that? And what
A
does that
lot
even
of times in the beginning, I was going like this. I'm like, wow, trying to point. So you have a camera in front of you, and then you have two TVs beside you. So when we look to the side and we're pointing, we're actually looking at a TV to make sure we know where we're pointing. But it took maybe a couple months, you practice in school, you practice on your internships, but it's still difficult. And I will say certain TV stations, you're on one side of the wall, and then the other, you're on the other side. So I've started my career on the opposite side that I'm on right now. And I was pointing this way. And then when you go to your next job, you're pointing this way. So it takes some practice, but you get the hang of it. It's pretty, now I don't even need them. I can point and whatever. I've been in this business too long.
We got about a minute left. So I want to ask you, what do you think students who want to be meteorologists should be focusing on right now?
You know what? For me, when I started in college, I did weather at a radio station. I did a lot of radio in the beginning of my career. And I think at first that really helped because in TV, you kind of have to find your voice. You kind of have to have your voice. And I think radio helped me because nobody's looking at my facial expressions to kind of see, where I'm going. So with radio, you're behind behind the microphone. Nobody can see you. So I think finding your voice first. The knowledge comes second. You really need to know what you're talking about, and especially for weather, because you have to be very confident, especially when we're talking about tornadoes, severe weather. You need you need your viewers to trust you and trust that you know what you're talking about. And then you have to be able to relay that knowledge in a very confident way. So I think that if you want to be a meteorologist, don't get discouraged by the math and science. It's hard. You'll get there. Don't be discouraged by the smaller markets. You'll get there. You'll get to where the market you want to be, but be very patient because it may take some time to get, some people really want to get back home. Well, I wanted to go back home and look at me, I'm in Chicago, home's Pittsburgh, and I'm not even there and it's over now. But I would just say, don't be discouraged. If this is something that you've wanted to do for a very long time, like me, just power through, you'll get there. I got here. I'm here. I'm happy. It took some time, but this is something that I've always wanted to do. So just continue to, push on and press forward.
Alicia, thank you so much. That's some great advice there. Really appreciate you. And we'll see you on the other side of the program.
Bye.
All right. Next up, we've got Sean Lewis of WGN News. Let me tell you a little bit about Sean. He's an award-winning anchor of WGN Saturday Morning News and WGN Sunday Morning News. He also files reports for WGN News at 5 and WGN News at 9 during the week. He previously anchored the midday news on CLTV. He's from Kenosha, Wisconsin, not too far from here. He spent 2 years as a weekend anchor at WWBT-TV. That's the NBC affiliate in Richmond, Virginia. He grew up watching Chicago news, lived and worked throughout the Midwest, and started reporting in Fargo, North Dakota, Madison, Wisconsin, Rockford, Illinois. He's been everywhere. Graduated from the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. And so happy to welcome Sean. What's up, man?
How you doing, Brandon? Good to see you.
Hey, I'm good. Are we on set with you right now?
You are, yeah. I just thought I'd bring you in to, the newsroom's kind of ugly and there are a lot of people around. So I just thought I'd take you into the studio.
I love it. I love it. So this is kind of your home right here where you make things happen. First of all, what really got you into wanting to be a news reporter, a news anchor?
So it's one of those things. It's like the Chicago way, right? I have an aunt who was in TV. She still does TV to some extent. She's retired now, but she got into TV in the 1970s, and she worked in Nebraska, and then she got a job in the Twin Cities. And ever since I was about 5 years old, I've kind of been wandering around newsrooms. And it's just been it always seemed like a really cool job, right? You didn't have to sit inside of an office all day long and sit at a desk and whatnot. You got to go out, you got to talk to people, you got to write, you got to be creative. So when it came around to, I think it was second grade, there must have been a handwriting assignment. And it was, when I grow up, I want to be, you copied that one off the board on that wide ruled paper. And then I put TV reporter. The only reason I know this is because my mom passed away like 15 years ago. I was going through all the papers and she saves everything, right? So I pulled this out and I'm like, oh my God, this is something I wrote when I was 7 years old. So I have proof that since 7 years old, I've wanted to do what I'm doing today. And then I got my first internship in Minneapolis at KSTP. And, as they say, the rest is history.
The rest is history from there. So, do you remember what your first reel was like?
It was interesting because if you go back and it's on a VHS tape, like I know you know that.
Yeah.
And I did it during my senior year of college. I was going to the UW Milwaukee. I was interning my entire senior year at WTMJ. And I was working my second semester with the investigative unit. So I was working with the reporter and the photographer who also was acting as a producer. And they were great. And they helped me make that first reel. So I was able to take some of the reports that I helped work on. I rewrote them for me. And then I was able to track them. And I was like, still to this day, decades later, appreciative to the editors who took the time to recut all of those stories. And then the photographer, Ray, who went out with me and did all of these different stand-ups at all these different locations around Milwaukee to put together that first reel for me. And it got me my first job at a really good station in Fargo.
What to you makes a reel stand out when you watch resume tapes from students?
So when we watch TV, we usually watch with our eyes first, right? So what I've always told, what I've been told and what others have been telling me throughout the years is you need to put, it doesn't matter what you're really saying, just as long as it sound okay, you need to look amazing. Because if a news director or a hiring manager like looks at that very first thing and they're like, wow, that person's good looking, or that person's very compelling on air, they come across, that's what you're going for, because that's the nature of our medium, is that you have to have some sort of, you don't have to be pretty, you don't have to be handsome, but you have to be compelling, something that jumps off the screen.
Absolutely. Talking about being in style. Look at that jacket. I mean, come on now.
Thank you, my friend.
You're hearing from one of the best dressed in the business right now. You gotta stand out for sure. So, Sean, take me through a typical day for you. You kind of have a dual role as a news reporter and a news anchor, and you're working weekends as well.
Yeah, so I've been, the WGN rebooted its weekend news in 2010, so 12 years ago now, and they named me weekend morning anchor. So I've been doing this now for 12 years, and basically on the weekends, my job, I get up at 4:30 in the morning, come in here, read through scripts, do the show, and then typically what I'll do afterwards is I'll either talk to some of my favorite colleagues in Chicago and students, or I will go out and do a feature package that will air in the 5 and 9 and 10 o'clock newscast that night, and then probably again on Sundays on my show. So that's what my anchoring days are like, is I anchor the show and then I will write a feature story, which is really fun for me because I really like, that's in my heart, is writing and telling stories. My reporting days, Mondays and Tuesdays, I work 4 10-hour days typically. And my reporting days, I will start my shift around 8. The producers and the assignment desk have their meeting around 7:30. I'll get my assignments. I'll go out, and the last 2 years especially, I've been driving myself. So I will typically be at home at 8 o'clock. If I'm not anchoring on the midday show, or if I'm not in-house reporting, I'll be just driving to wherever my live location is. I'll be putting my stories together. I'll be live at 11 during the 11 and noon newscast, and then during the 4, 5, and 6 o'clock newscast as well.
Now that anchor chair is heavily coveted, no matter where you go. But it's very rare that a student would get that fresh out of college. But that's something that's also on a lot of people's minds. So how did you kind of prepare yourself and advocate for yourself to be given that opportunity when the time came?
That's a great question, because right from the start, so a lot of people are natural anchors. Other people are natural reporters. And it depends on where your comfort status is in that, right? Do you like sitting there and in reading off a teleprompter? Do you like writing your own copy and kind of talking with people and crafting the story with the team? And then some people kind of come by both naturally, and others have to work at both. And my very first job in Fargo, I really liked reporting, and I always was just like, I'm going to be a news anchor, right? Because everyone, by and large, will be like, I want to be an anchor man. So, and I bugged my boss, Brandon. When I tell you I bugged my boss in Fargo for almost all 2 years that I was there, and I never sat on that set except for to do some cut-ins during Good Morning America, and I was so nervous. And the thing about anchoring, but for the most part, is that you need to do it to get better. Mm-hmm. Unless you have this natural ability, you have to do it to get better. So my next job, I followed my partner at the time to Madison. That's where I got my job in Madison. I was a reporter, and I got to fill in maybe once, twice a year, because that station was so stacked with anchors that if one anchor took off, another anchor took the spot, right? Mm-hmm. So I really didn't and you're not going to get better at doing that if you're only doing it once or twice a year. And then that's when Rockford came, literally out of the blue, asked if I would be interested in a morning anchor job. Now, this is a solo anchor morning show with a meteorologist, 90 minutes on the ABC affiliate, Monday through Friday. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to get better doing anchoring, it's going to be 90 minutes, 5 days a week. So I did that for 2 years, and then I went to the NBC affiliate in Richmond, and that was such an amazing station, such an amazing city, Richmond, Virginia. Just the history there. I was a double major. I was a double major in political science and a minor in history, U.S. history. So going to Richmond was so amazing for me. And it was one of those stations, and everyone who gets into the business, you will have one job where everyone you work with becomes your friends. And it's not going to be at every station. It's not going to be like that in every place you go, but you will have a coalescing of your lives at some point where you find commonality, and the people you work with are the people you hang out with outside of work. That was Richmond for me. And then after 2 years, just over 2 years there, I came home and I worked at CLTV first and then WGN for the last 15 years.
Man, quite a journey there. And you mentioned, that journey to get to the anchor chair. Many people probably look on the outside. They've seen the movie Anchorman with Ron Burgundy, and they just think about, being on TV, it's just glitz and glam. But there's a lot of work that goes into anchoring itself. Can you describe a little bit of what that job is like for you and how you approach anchoring a show?
Sure. Everyone has their own style, right? And I grew up watching all of the different major market newscasts between Milwaukee and Chicago. So I grew up watching some major market television newscasts, right? I also grew up watching my aunt's tapes that she would send back home from small market Nebraska. And I heard Alicia talking about being in market 201, was it, Alicia?
203, yeah.
203. My aunt's first job was in market 209, 210, North Platte, Nebraska. So that was some small market news. Yeah. So I saw that side of it. But watching Peter Jennings growing up and watching all of these legendary anchor guys, you kind of come up with your own version of that. And that's, I like to be conversational. I like to kind of read the prompter, but not read the prompter. And sometimes you do it better than other days, depending on how tired the eyes are. But, just kind of talking to the camera as if you're talking to a good friend.
That's a good way to approach it. What is something that students who are interested in becoming a reporter or anchor should be focusing right now while they're in school?
So one thing that, I really was I was blessed in many ways by having someone I loved and was a family member in the business already. So getting that very first internship, and this was back in the day when internships weren't paid, right? So it was a little bit easier almost to come by an internship because they're like, yeah, free labor, come on aboard. And I was able to get that first internship right out of my freshman year. So, and that was the summer of OJ. In the Bronco chase and the arraignment and everything. Yeah. So and also the Major League Baseball strike as well. So that there was a lot of news going on. But so that, you know, I did all my freshman year at, like, between freshman and sophomore year, between sophomore and junior year, I was interning. And that is where you really learn, A, if you're cut out for this business and you want to be in it. And two, if that's where you hone your craft in a way, at least the early part of it. Because very often when you're in school, you have like a week to do a package or 2 weeks to do a package. And then you are in a real newsroom where you have an hour to do a package. Mm-hmm. So that is where you learn how to work in the real world. You learn so much in such a short amount of time that you would never be able to possibly learn in a classroom setting.
Absolutely. It's trial by fire in a sense.
Yeah.
Sean,
internships are crucial.
They really are. They really are. Sean, thank you so much for taking the time and having this conversation. We'll see you on the other side of this for some student Q&A.
Sounds good, man.
All right, guys. Next up is our news managers. We start with Nneka Nwosu, as well as Jessie Garcia and Adrienne Balow. So I'll give you their bios here as they pop in. So Nneka, she's the assistant news director for ABC7 Eyewitness News, a Harvard University Neiman Foundation for Journalism fellow, and Emmy Award-winning producer. Nneka joins ABC7 from WCVB TV in Boston. Right now, she oversees digital, including ABC7's new streaming newscasts, specials, and storytelling. She graduated from Princeton University and received a master's degree in journalism from Columbia University's Graduate School of Journalism over in NYC. Jessie Garcia, she leads all news programming efforts on television and digital platforms for CBS 58 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, WMLW The M, and Telemundo, Wisconsin. She's a native of Madison, Wisconsin. She recently joined CBS 58 from WTMJ TV, where she most recently served as the editorial director. And in her more than 25-year career at the station, she also held the positions of broadcast director and sports anchor and reporter. One of her early and notable career accomplishments was she was the first female sports anchor in Wisconsin at WISC TV in Madison, a true trailblazer. She's also been a college journalism instructor and a writer, among other things, the book Going for Wisconsin Gold, Stories of Our State Olympians. So thank you so much, Jessie, for joining us. And then Adrienne Balo, she is a supervising producer of the 4 p.m. news for WGN TV, where she manages a team of anchors, reporters, writers, and other staff to create and execute an hour-long daily newscast. She was born and raised in Boca Raton, Florida. She's a professional. She's got lots of professional experience, including work in media relations and helping companies expand their media presence and marketing efforts. And she graduated with a Bachelor's of Science from the University of Florida. So we got the boss ladies in the building. Great to see y'all. Is Adrienne in here yet? There we go. Now I see her, I think. There we go. Hey, Adrienne, how you doing?
Wait, let me get unmuted. I'm great, guys. Nice to see everybody.
All right. The leading ladies. I'll start by asking, what kind of got you into the news industry? What that appetite for you? I'll start with Jessie.
Hello, everyone. So nice to be here. So as you heard, I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin. I knew from about the age 8 on that I wanted to be a writer. I was just obsessed with writing. Used to walk home from school, making up stories in my head, that kind of thing. I thought I'd be a newspaper reporter just because I loved writing so much. But I had an uncle who was a producer director at a TV station in Madison. And I remember on a career day when I was in high school, we had to go and, watch somebody in the field we wanted to be in. And I asked if a friend and I could go out to the station and watch, observe for the day. And we did. And they actually put us on live at 5. So we were just standing off to the side watching, and a guest hadn't shown up. And so they were light on time, and they were like, well, let's just grab these 2 high school students and sit them at the chairs and talk with them. And I mean, my heart was hammering out of my chest, but we were on for probably a minute and a half, but we drove home screaming out the windows of the car, we were just on live at 5. We were so excited. And, I understood the power of TV from a very early age and was just very, very fascinated by it. Thought I'd be in news, but I kind of found my way to sports. I had a different upbringing. People say, oh, were you an athlete? Or, did you have a lot of siblings involved in sports? None of that. Only child, single mother. She doesn't care anything about sports. She honestly couldn't believe I became a sportscaster. But for me, I wanted to marry my passion of writing with, I also had a passion for kind of acting and performing, but I knew that I was not a very good actress. And so to marry those things together so that there's some writing and presenting to people, I decided to major in broadcast journalism at Boston University, did an internship out at a Boston TV station, came back to Madison, did a few internships, the whole kind of story there, fell into TV and just love TV because although it's still great writing, and I tell people all the time, good TV starts with good writing. It also is sort of taking it from like 2-dimensional on paper to 3-dimensional because you're adding pictures and sound. And so it's a whole different form of writing and thinking and storytelling. But as you heard, I am passionate about storytelling in all its forms, whether that be, books or a documentary that I took some time out of the business to make a documentary and to teach and do some things in that realm too. So I just love storytelling. Everybody in this world has a million stories and I love to be able to tell them. So that's my story.
Yeah, my friend Ticia tells me you're an amazing instructor. She linked up with you in March Madness. And she says,
Ticia Mazinga we're talking about. She's in Des Moines. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Nneka, how about you? How did you get your start in this news world?
Well, Brandon, everyone, thanks for having us. I'll just say this. I shared a link in the chat just quickly that kind of has a little bit more of my background because I did begin as a reporter. Like I think many of us become interested in this business because we want to be on TV. But there's a reason why the 3 news managers are in a kind of answering questions together, right? Because we don't have the jobs that people are like, oh, I want to get into TV and be an assistant news director. And that's how I felt. I, up until probably a year ago, would tell people I don't want to be an assistant news director. And, I've been approached about this job, this type of job several times, and most recently turned one down this summer because I said I don't want to be an assistant news director because I've always seen myself as somebody who is very content driven. I love being involved in content. I love writing and helping to formulate a script and tell a story and do interviews. And I loved being in the field as a reporter and then later as a field producer. But I would say, like some of our other panelists, it began as an interest as a kid. I'm first generation American, as you can probably tell. My name is Nigerian. And when you're here, I don't know if other immigrant kids out there have this experience, but your parents are very interested in what's going on in their new country, their new world, right? Locally, nationally. So we always watch the 6 o'clock news. I grew up in Philadelphia. So we always watched 6 ABC, 6 o'clock news. And then right after was Peter Jennings. And that was, my evening, and my whole family watched together. So I always was interested in the local news. And, I remember our family was so excited when we saw an anchor outside having lunch one day on her lunch break, in the summer one day, and we were down in Center City. So that's how it began for me. I've just always had an interest in writing, always kind of been a news junkie, just came from a news junkie family, even though my parents said, and if you're an immigrant, you probably can relate. You have to be a doctor. You have to be a lawyer. If you're good in school, if you do well in school, forget those other things. Even up through Princeton, I said, I'm going to go to law school, even though I had this desire to do news. And how I got into it was the summer after junior year, everyone was doing all of these internships. And I'm thinking, okay, where am I going to intern? So I said, I think news would be fun. I could do it for a summer and say I did it, thinking I'm still going to go to law school. So I applied to an internship at ABC News. And I interned with World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, right? That's how I grew up watching it, obsessed with it. It was so cool to work for Peter Jennings. And that was actually turned out to be the last year that he was working for that show, because you guys will remember he passed in 2005. So that was 2004. And it was a great summer to work in news. Presidential election, Ronald Reagan passed at the beginning of the summer, so there's a lot of coverage with that. I remember pitching a story that they actually did for Person of the Week. I think they do it nightly now, but there was a segment Person of the Week, and I pitched one and they did it, which was awesome. So I kind of was like, ooh, that was great, but that was fun for a summer because I'm going to law school, right?
Mhm.
Eventually, I applied to law school thinking, and I considered joint degree programs. Then I got into Columbia for a master's degree in journalism. And I thought, this is actually what I want to do. So I'll do that instead of wasting money and time going to law school. And my first job, I was a one-man band reporter. I was shooting, writing, editing all of my own stuff in upstate New York, driving myself around. I did the same thing in Rhode Island. I did the same thing in Connecticut. I eventually went to Boston as a producer because I did get burnt out from one-man banding, to be completely honest, if anyone wants to talk about one-man banding. But when I look back at that experience, that really, there's a quote that says, what you learn here is often what gets you here. And it's so true, because now I've led organizations, I led a magazine show in Boston before coming here. I know what it's like to edit. I can talk intelligently about Adobe. I've used Panasonic cameras and Sony cameras. I can talk intelligently about that and understand the difference. I've shot in HD, I've shot in standard definition, right? I've edited tape to tape way back in the day. So I think those experiences, sometimes I say to myself, oh, I should have just been a producer and worked my way up. But really, those experiences of being in the field, I've anchored, I've reported, having that well-rounded experience, I think makes me a better boss and makes me able to understand the challenges that everyone has in the newsroom. So that's sort of a very long-winded way of talking about how I eventually got here. Again, I didn't want to be an assistant news director, but this job in particular, what was interesting to me about it is that I'm working directly with the investigative unit and our consumer investigative unit at WLS. I'm helping to launch our streaming newscasts. We have a special that's on tomorrow on Harold Washington, as you guys know, first Black mayor of Chicago. We've spent months putting that together. That's something that I could lead, having that kind of long form storytelling experience from Boston. So again, everything that you learn at every stage of your career really does get you to that place that you're aiming for. So if you're discouraged one-man banding, if you're discouraged making $20,000 like I did in my first job, and my first job wasn't that long ago, we're talking like 14 years ago, right? But those struggles really do get you where you want to be.
Absolutely. We got someone's doggy making an appearance. Is that you, Adrian?
I knew it. My dogs took off. Sorry.
I love it. It was like my turn. So Adrian, what got you into the news industry?
It's funny listening to everybody's story. They're all different. And it started when I was a kid. I was always very, very curious. My mom and dad would joke. I just asked a ton of questions all the time. I was pretty quiet and shy, but I was very inquisitive, and I liked to write. English was always my strong point. And it was a grammar thing and spelling. I still to this day, my husband laughs. We drive down the street and I'll see a sign that's misspelled. He's like, how do you always notice that? Like my brain just goes that way. But I had a natural interest in current events. Again, my father would always have the news on in the evenings, and I was exposed to that at home. I would read the paper. We would get the newspaper and I'd read it old school, have the paper in hand. And I think just being exposed to it all, I just had this curiosity. And I remember I was raised outside of Cincinnati. And when I was really young, it was like a summer camp thing. We went to one of the TV stations in Cincinnati. And I was really just enthralled with the setting and being in a TV studio. And they kind of showed us how TV worked. And from that day on, I've always wanted to work in TV. I was in high school. We didn't have a TV program. I think I'm probably a little bit older than everybody here, but we had a school newspaper. So I was on the paper, and I did everything I could to kind of be in that area in journalism. And when it came time to look at schools, I knew I wanted to go into TV and broadcasting. And the University of Florida, I was living in South Florida at the time. University of Florida's program is still one of the top in the country. And so that's the only college I applied to, the college I got into. I worked at the TV station there. They have a PBS station on campus, and it's a student-run daily newscast. So it was a very unique opportunity. I got picked to be the producer of the newscast. It was 30-minute newscast Monday through Friday. So I moved my graduation off for a summer. So I was producing a daily newscast when I was still in college. And we had a lot of exposure. I mean, we did reporting, we shot, edited, we got to do everything. I did anchor, I reported, I did weather. And so I got a taste of all of it in college. But when it came time to, apply for jobs, I really wanted to do the producing side of it and be behind the cameras. And I felt like that was my comfort zone. And I don't know if people might not say I'm type A, but you will find with producers, there is a common personality trait that, you're able to kind of hold it all together, keep it organized, keep it on track, and you want it to be a certain way and everything's planned out. And that's kind of always been my demeanor and my personality. And so here I am. I've just been thinking about it, 28 years in this business. And I've been in Chicago for the last 24. I've worked at WGN at 13 years now. And I've worked every job you can think of, every shift, every crappy shift, every holiday that I went to work. I mean, the one, I think a lot of people have said, you sacrifice to work in this business. And, I've seen interns come in and say, I want to be on TV, I want to be an anchor. And there's a lot of work that goes to it. And you have to realize you have to work the overnights, you work the holidays, you don't walk in having that luxurious schedule. But I've done it all, and here I am, and I love helping people. The business has changed a lot. My first job, I interned at a station in Gainesville when I was still in school. And again, they were non-paid internships, but I worked and I did everything I could. I ran the prompter back in the day when we had to put paper scripts on a belt under the camera. I worked then, I got an internship at the NBC station WPTV in West Palm Beach. Mm-hmm. That is essentially where I ended up in my first job right out of school. I was in market 44, which at that point I was the highest of anybody from the University of Florida. That was like the highest market of anyone out of school. And I just worked my way up from there. I've worked a bunch of major news events. It is, I didn't want to have a career where you're, at a desk job, 9 to 5, every day is different. And that is true. I'm at a computer all day, but I never know what's going to happen. And seriously, things can implode and blow up. And I mean, the pace of news now has changed tremendously. The 24/7 news cycle has really changed the business. I mean, my first job, 1995, somebody said AOL earlier. Yes. We had AOL dial-up internet on one computer in the corner of the newsroom. Otherwise, we had the old AP wires would just print out on the printers all the time. But so I've seen it all evolve, and it is changing so fast now. And, there are so many opportunities for everybody. And I can't imagine being in college and trying to get into this industry now. It's just so many more things out there that you can do. And you have the capability of the technology that you can really, pave your own way. And that's my background.
Absolutely. Now, all three of you play a pivotal role in making sure the newscast you put forward is the best possible product for the audience. So how does that work? What really goes into putting on a daily newscast? I'll start with Jessie, especially from your end, Jessie, being a sports anchor, legendary one at that for a long time, going into more manager roles. What goes into that for you?
So just to give like a kind of typical day so people understand, a news director's day, and I'm still pretty new to the chair. I've been in since January 3rd in this role. My first news director job, I am absolutely loving it. I'm just as a side note, I only had one female news director in my 25-year career, and I never had a female general manager. The station I'm at, we have my boss, my general manager is a woman. Myself as a woman, the only woman currently leading a newsroom in Milwaukee of the 4 networks. And I am also the first Hispanic, male or female, to lead a newsroom in Wisconsin. As far as I know, I've been trying to see if anybody knows if there's anybody else. So, it's long overdue for newsrooms to represent the people that we, our viewers, the people that we are speaking to every single day. So I'm really, really proud of that. But as far as like the putting together of the news, it starts the day before. We have a meeting at about 5 o'clock the night before where we go over, the assignment desk comes with the list of everything that's happening the next day. And then I go over that with the assistant news director and myself, make a plan. We can, probably pre-assign 2 to 3, sometimes even more reporters, depending on what's happening. And then the next morning, first thing when I wake up, I probably have at least 100 new emails. So from the moment I wake up, I'm just going through everything, seeing what's going on. We start with our news manager meeting at 8:30, where we plot out the day. We have our 9 a.m. station meeting where people pitch ideas. We settle on what we're covering, send people off in their different directions. We have producer regroup meetings throughout the day. We have the nighttime meeting, then planning what's happening for night side. We have the final meeting of the day for me and for the dayside crews at 5:45 p.m. going over the 9 and 10 o'clock rundowns. So, it's a 10-hour day minimum. I'm in the office from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Just on a normal day. The other day I worked 15 hours, I think, for election coverage on Tuesday. So, that's part of it though. Like I would not be in my newsroom for election night. I have, you have that's part of the news in your blood. Like you have to be there. What I love about what I'm doing now and coming from the on-air side, I fully understand everything that my anchors and reporters and field crews are going through. I like to bring that to the table, but I really like the big picture of TV. I like figuring out, I was a sports person, but I love news too. And so I love keeping up on what's going on. And I love figuring out how we can tell this a little bit differently. I use an analogy with our newsroom that I'll share with all of you. It's a Harry Potter analogy. Harry Potter caught the train on track 9 3/4, right? So, or platform 9 3/4. I always like to visualize that. Every other station can be on platform 9 and platform 10. We're going to be on platform 9 3/4. How are we going to do things a little bit differently than everybody else and stand out from everybody else? Because honestly, if you look up and all 4 stations or 5 stations, however many there are in your market, if they're all doing the same thing, why should anybody choose station A, B, C, D, E, whatever? So we're striving to be different. And so that's exciting for me. I have a passion for the future of TV news. Where are we going as an industry? How can we stay relevant 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And I think when you want to appeal to the next generation, you need to ask the next generation. So, I would ask all of the young folks on this panel to please, or, who are listening in to, please, if you have ideas, nobody has really landed on that next big idea yet. I asked my 18-year-old son what would get him to watch TV news. And he gave me an idea that we're running with. I can't announce it quite yet because it's coming out in maybe a month or 2, but we're really, really excited about it. So these are the types of things that I want us to be thinking about. How do we reach people in new ways? How do we stand out from the crowd? And then it's just about great storytelling. It really is. Great visuals, great writing. And I don't want to take up too much time here because I know other people have comments as well, but I'll just throw in my advice really quick for high school or college students. Great TV is great writing. So you really have to, if you want to be on air or you want to be a producer, anything like that, you have to love the writing part. And I would highly suggest that you join your high school or your college newspaper. There may be TV and radio and all of that as well, but nothing will prepare you for writing as much as newspaper reporting. On deadline, interviewing, grammar, spelling, the whole thing. And like Adrienne, I'm a little bit of a grammar geek and, spelling and that kind of thing. My mom was an English major and still corrects my grammar to this day. So, write as much as you possibly can. And then my advice for coming out of college, if you're putting your first reel together, is this. I see tons of reels, mountains of reels, and, across all the news, weather, sports, everything. And first of all, I want to see you right off the bat. So sometimes people will have this long anchor intro or something before it gets to them. And when I click on it, I need to see you because otherwise I'm like, wait, which person is applying here? So you off the bat, I would do probably 5 stand-ups if you're applying for a reporter right off the bat. And let me just say this, I see so many reels where the reporter is just head and shoulders, and they're maybe pointing behind them, like, hey, as you can see behind me, the fire, the car accident, whatever. And they think that this is kind of showing that they can be demonstrative on camera. But, you know, and I'm not trying to be too harsh here. It's just that any reporter worth their salt can do that, can stand there and kind of gesture behind them. What I want to see from you is your best, most creative work right off the bat. I'm not saying you need to hang upside down, you know, from the rafters of a building. Although if you have a stand up where you're hanging upside down from the rafters of a building, I will take it first. I just want to see your most creative stuff, because if I see that, then I know that you're super creative, and all the other stuff can come later in your reel, or I just know that it's there because if you can do this, you can do that. So start with your like smash bang, crazy, interesting, wild stand-ups, and then get me to your, you know, the heart of your writing, et cetera. Because I just want to know how creative you are right off the bat.
Absolutely. Yeah, Nneka, when it comes to putting together a digital newscast, what goes into it? What are you experiencing?
So I should be, you know, it's interesting that my job description really says overseeing digital, but I have a hand in both. But so it's very much the same. What we're trying to do on digital, and Jessie hinted at this, is everyone's trying to figure out what the next thing is in news, and we're trying to allow the digital space to be a place where we can show more personality. I don't think that the next generation, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if the next generation wants the voice of God anchor telling you that there was a car crash. They want someone who's going to sound like their friend, or like somebody just having a conversation with them. But I do think the next generation will watch something if it's good. Like Jessie said, if you think about Netflix and all of those documentaries that are coming out on Netflix, they are being watched primarily by people, you know, I'm an old millennial, so my age and younger. So it's not that yes, our attention spans are shorter, but if your content is good enough, people will watch it. I personally, one thing that I try to bring to our digital newscasts, Brandon, is we will still cover the news of the day, but you know, we might not cover a whole package on the fire, because to be honest, most of us have already heard about the fire on Twitter, right? So I know that's kind of the way that our linear newscast is focused. Oh, we got great flames, let's put it on TV. It's okay, but if there are no injuries, I'm not trying to say it's not important. The point is we have to start having those conversations as a newsroom. If you know what worked in 30 years ago, showing the cool fire that we got video of, but today, if I can see the fire and I basically get the story in 100 and something characters, you know, what is the reason for the audience to tune in to see what I am bringing to them? Because now it's not a habit anymore. People, maybe for our parents and our grandparents, but the next generation doesn't have that habit of running home and turning on the 6 o'clock news. And that's where digital comes in, right? Because what we're realizing is people want news on demand. People want to be able to pick and choose. We have a digital, I mentioned the linear special that will also be on digital. We have another digital special that's all stories about Illinois folks helping people in Ukraine. And that's all the episode, it's going to be posted later today, but that's all that special is focused on. So it's very more subject matter based. So that's kind of how we're trying to think, Brandon, just trying to think very differently about less, you know, run and gun breaking news, and more of that additional storytelling that I think people will still watch if it's good enough.
Definitely. And Adrienne, as a supervising producer, you're working directly with the anchors and your team of producers and really everybody trying to get every part of this product together. So how do you approach that with your daily newscast?
Well, I mean, it is a challenge too, especially doing the 4 p.m. I've been doing it for about 1.5 years now. Before that, I was a writer and a film producer, and I worked on the morning show, which is a whole nother beast at Channel 9 at WGN, which is now a 6-hour show. Anyone in Chicago is familiar. That is a long running, 20 plus years. They've dominated the ratings. So that's a whole nother experience. But at 4 o'clock, that's kind of really when the evening starts, and you know, so much changes. We have a meeting at 11 a.m. which used to be in person pre-COVID, and now it's all on Zoom. And it can go 20, 30 minutes. We're figuring out kind of what the stories we're going to put reporters on. And then we have another one again at 2:00, and a lot changes in that time. And a lot of the reporters all start at 2:00 too. So, there's a lot of changes. And by 2:00, I got my show pretty much set. But the joke is always, 2:30, 3:00, everything implodes and everything is blown up and I start from scratch again. So at my show, particularly at WGN, there's a lot of scramble just because it's always changing, and just the way news is too, and being in a big city, you go in with a plan, and I'm ready for it to all change. And I really love breaking news and just flying with it. And my EP, we have an executive producer, she oversees the 4, 5, and 6 o'clock hours. And it's a lot. We have a lot of reporters, we have a lot of writers, but we all work together. We have the meetings, things change, we get used to doing stuff on the fly. I mean, you got to be quick. You got to be really fast. And that, Sean mentioned it when you first start, things take you a while, but you adjust because you have to do everything quickly. It's changing. The hour that I do, we meet, some anchors come in earlier, some come in later. It depends. All the shifts are different. So it's always changing. We just have to be great communicators. And that's what we are, is communicate, because especially in a number 3 market, there are a lot of people involved in putting together a newscast. And so I have to tell everybody what we're doing. If we do something special, if I do something different, I need to explain my vision to everybody. And, I take feedback too. And you need to be able to do that, listen to people. And they might have a better idea. And I love that. I'm always about, give me input, give me feedback. So, on a day-to-day basis, again, we have our 2 key meetings, and then things change throughout there. And during COVID, I was in the newsroom every day. I never worked from home, and not one day. And so, it was a little different, because at some point I would joke at 6 p.m. I stood up and I was the only one there. Like, I was like, this is so weird. But that made things even harder, because you couldn't just yell to somebody, hey, change that, kill that story. There was a whole lot of other steps involved with everybody being online and communicating. And a lot of our systems fell apart, and just, we lost internet, so people couldn't feed their stories. That still is going on right now. We have some technical issues with some of our equipment, but it's just being ready to adapt. And that's probably the biggest tool that I tell people, like, you just have to be flexible.
Absolutely. Flexibility is everything in this industry, because as we saw with Friday news dumps like we had yesterday here in Chicago, it could change in a moment's notice, the top story.
We had it in Milwaukee too.
Yeah, Milwaukee as well. Yeah, that Friday news dump is something serious. Nneka, Jessie, Adrienne, thank you so much. We're now going to bring in everybody and take a lot of great student questions that have been rolling in. So we'll go ahead and bring everybody in. If you're a student out there, you got a question, there's still time. You can drop your question in that Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll try to get to as many as possible as we bring in our multiple panelists here. Once again, that Q&A box is down there at the bottom of your screen. Hey, Mike, good to see you. Matt, I'm sorry. Hey, Matt, good to see you again. Oh, now you're in your place. There we go.
Yeah,
there we go. Yeah, yes, indeed. Sean, all right. Getting the band back together. I love the tie, by the way, Matt. That's nice.
Oh, you know what? I never wear a tie, but for today, I felt like I should. I don't know why.
I didn't get the memo, the tie memo. I don't wear ties either, but I would have done so if I would have known, man. All right, y'all. We got the band back together here. Our first question is from Julia. She says, "It scares me to see so many people choosing different paths after they try local news for a while. What is your opinion on this? And do you guys have any advice as far as local news staying in that path?" Who wants to try that first? Nneka?
I'd love to. I'm so sorry to jump in, but I also am very passionate about this, because I always find that the best journalists sometimes are the ones who leave. And that can be, I don't know if anyone else has had that experience. I wanted to get out of news as recently as last year. It is, you guys know, we had a rough 2 years. It's not an easy business to be in, and work-life balance is becoming more important. I think newsroom culture needs to change, to be quite honest. Maybe I might have a radical idea on this, but after the pandemic, people took stock of their lives, and people like working from home. People want to see their families. more, maybe they're moving to be closer to them. And now companies, even news companies, right? I'm on the hiring side. Well, people will ask what the culture is like, what's nearby, what can I do in Chicago? Should I move? Is it affordable, right? I think we need to pay better. Sorry, I know this, like, let's be real. We need to pay better in this industry. I'm sorry. I know it's no longer the industry of, well, everyone wants to be with us, so you'll take the $20,000. No, that's tech right now, right? That's not us anymore. We need to pay better. We need a better work-life balance. I don't love the culture of, let me just sit at my desk so that my boss is here, even if knows I'm here, even if I'm not doing anything. If you're not doing anything, go home. Don't feel bad about taking a sick day, because we're all plugged in anyway. If you're in news, you're plugged in. We all know that. I just think as leaders, managers, our expectations of people need to change. I think everyone, when there's breaking news, everyone will be all hands on deck. But we have to create a better culture. It's hard, and we need to think about that, but we need to pay better, and we need to treat people better day to day. I'm very passionate about this, if you could tell, but I think if we are able to adapt within what we need to produce daily news, then we'll keep more people. If anyone has any good ideas, let me know, but we need to pay better first of all. Okay, that's it.
I 100% agree with that. 100%, because the people who stay in news shouldn't be just the people whose parents can afford to support them. That's not the best, that's necessarily the best in people, but.
Courtney's right, because think about the stories you cover. You can't relate to stories about the expense of childcare if you are somebody who comes from wealth. And I mean, that's me, right? I bought a house and didn't put 20% down my first house. I struggled my first few jobs. I had credit card debt after my first reporting job. I'm just keeping it real, right? So if you don't know what it's like to be an average American, how can you really cover those stories? It can't just be an industry for the wealthy. And that's
I've said that so many times.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I've said that so many times. Diversity is everything. It's, what socioeconomic background were you raised in? Did you grow up in subsidized housing and then you saw your parents work 2 or 3 jobs to put you through college? Do you know what it's like to have student debt? That's a huge story right now. And if your parents were able to afford, and blessings to them to be able to do this, but if you were able to go through college and come out the other side without any debt, how could you possibly know what that feels like? You can understand it theoretically, but there's no real way to empathize with the audience. And I think especially now, we're not in the age anymore. And as you talked about, we're not in the age of Walter Cronkite sitting at a desk, like coldly reading a script. We are in a business now that has morphed into empathy and feeling. And part of that is being able to have a staff of reporters and photographers and producers who can bring that emotion into the storytelling process and really get to the heart of it. Instead of telling it from a 40,000 foot perspective, bring it down to the ground where we can really feel what the community is feeling at that moment. And that's part of the power of what we saw in 2020 with the protests and the riots. My hometown, Kenosha, was international news with what happened with Jacob Blake. And I could not believe that I went to my hometown and reporting from like a burned out cars behind me. It's not what Kenosha is. And so even growing up in like what used to be a very blue collar town and still very much is, even my perspective growing up in that environment lent itself to being able to tell the story of like what was going on here in this town of 100,000 people.
Yeah, absolutely. Diversity is critical. It really is. I mean, I drumbeat that all the time, so I'm glad you guys hit on that for sure. This question from Marcus, he's interested in doing sports, so we'll give this one to Mike Hall. In the sports department, he's asking, what should I do? I don't have the hands-on deck journalism experience, no on-air experience. He's wondering if he should go to grad school to get some experience behind the camera or in front of the camera, or should he apply for a PA position just to get his foot in the door?
His name was Marcus, is that right?
Yeah.
Marcus, great question. I didn't go to grad school. Most of the people, not all, but most of the people that I know in the industry did not go to grad school. Someone who did can probably give you a more detailed answer than I can, but I don't think it's necessary. I think you need reps, and I think you need experience. And I think, again, maybe like we were talking earlier, if you're in a financial position where you can afford that, that's great. But if you're not, you're going to be fighting even more uphill once you do start your career, financially speaking. So if I was you and I was looking to start, I would start first off on your own. I think Matt was saying earlier, like, make your own YouTube channel, like do what you need to do. And there are so many places where you can start digitally and online that you can do it on a way where there's not a bright spotlight on you. And that's how you can get some reps in. But I would start today. I mean, do 30 in 30 days where you're doing it yourself on a private YouTube channel that you don't share to anybody, or on a private Instagram account, and publish them to challenge yourself, but don't accept any followers, right? Just so you've given yourself the opportunity to get some reps. Any way you can get reps, to me, I would think would be more valuable too.
Absolutely, Marcus. I'd also add in, get creative. Take advantage of TikTok, take advantage of YouTube, take advantage of these new things we get out there to put content out there and make a name for yourself. You don't have to be at a traditional sports station or news station to get those reps in it all. This
Brandon,
question here,
real quick,
yeah.
sorry, just to piggyback on that,
Yeah.
because I know I mentioned social media and all of that,
Mhm.
but be prepared to talk more than 15 seconds. Be prepared
Yes.
to hold a full conversation. In most jobs, they're looking for well-rounded people. So a lot of people can be very funny in 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, hyper edited. But when you get famous on that TikTok and then you're invited on some show to actually have a conversation about yourself, are you going to be able to hold the audience without all of the effects? Like, that's something to think about too. So build your whole self up, not just the 15-second version of yourself.
Love that, Matt. Absolutely. All right, Alicia, this question is from Alexa, directed towards you. She says that she had an opportunity to intern at WHIZ, where you started off. She's a big weather, yeah, exactly, Wiz. She's a big weather nerd, and she has experience anchoring for the local news channel in Valparaiso. She's asking if internships are still beneficial if they're not in the direct field of news she plans on entering, which would be broadcast meteorology. And she also adds, would sports and anchor opportunities still be beneficial, even though she wants to get into broadcast meteorology?
I was just thinking that question that was posed to Mike about, being in sports. And I was thinking, internships are, I had 3 just so I can, have all my ducks in a row. So I knew everything, because yes, you go to school, you learn everything in school, but it's really that hands-on getting in there and just, getting out there, whether it's reporting, whether it's with weather or sports. If you're reporting, you get out with the reporter and, you go to a story, you do that. I had weather interns come with me to tornado outbreaks after the aftermath. I was like, you need to, instead of sitting in here, you need to come with me. We need to look at what just happened, because you need that experience, and that experience will take you far. So, I think we're starting to open things back up again. So hopefully we can get some interns into the TV stations again after, the pandemic, we, did shut that down. But I have people, oh my goodness, I have so many young women and young men who came in even here in Chicago to shadow me for a day, just for a day. And we've kept in touch. And now there's some of them in Rockford, they're in Buffalo, New York. And, we're still keeping in touch. And yeah, you come in, you have to come in at our times though. You have to get right in at 2:00 in the morning or 3:00 in the morning. And I tell them all the time, this is not a 9 to 5. If you want to shadow me, you're coming in at 2:00 in the morning, the same time I come in. I had a really good opportunity when I was in Indianapolis. There was one of our sister stations. Something happened, and I had to do the weather for one of the sister stations in Lafayette, Indiana. So I would have the intern do the weather. I was like, here, just do it. Do the weather. I'll look over your work, make sure everything's fine. You can do the weather for, come put everything together and I'll present it. But it was a great opportunity. So I definitely think that it's still a great opportunity to get out there and get that side of the experience for sure.
Absolutely. You want to be an active intern. If you're at an internship and you're just sitting at the computer the whole time on Facebook,
not gonna work.
Yeah, it's not gonna work.
And not with me. I'm like, you're putting the forecast together. Go.
And that's great, Alicia, that you make them do that, because sometimes interns are so like they're shy and they don't want to get in the way. And unless you're a loudmouth and say, hey, I'm in the way, teach me something, that's great that you actually pull them and say, come with me. I'm going to show you what you need to know. And that is so beneficial. I was one of those loudmouths. And that, but it is crucial that you get into you make friends in that newsroom, because they've been where you have been. So they know where you need to go and they can help you get there.
Absolutely.
And I had great mentors that did it to me. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm going to do it to them.
That's right. You pass it along. All right. This next question here is going to go to Nneka. It's from Cameron. He says he's a senior in college working part-time and freelance at a station he really likes being a part of. How does he grow and move up within that station?
Okay, so it's the same advice that was just given by Alicia and Sean. You have to be very active. I always remember interns. And the ones who do stuff, right? There are some interns people will say, oh, they interned here, or they apply for a job and they have the internship on their resume. And I'm like, I don't remember this person. But if they were active and helped, then I'm like, oh yeah, top of the pile. I mean, I still keep in touch with some interns who will throughout their careers say, oh, I got this job, or hey, I'm choosing between this. What advice do you have? And if you're somebody that you've been in our station and you've been an intern, then we'll take the time to talk to you. I think anybody here would say the same. So I think if you want to stand out and get a job and get noticed, we've all talked about how competitive it is, but if you have that chance to have an internship, and if somebody remembers you, a reporter, producer, an assignment editor that you work closely with, they will be your advocate. If they say, yeah, this guy's girl, whoever is awesome, I remember them, they did this, this, and this, they're very eager. That's the best way to make yourself available or make yourself hireable, if you will. So you're saying that he was saying he's hoping to stay there past this internship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If they have anything available, honestly, just take it. It might be a terrible schedule, overnight on the desk or something. But if you really like this station and you want to stay there, take the job, because it's not always going to be the overnight schedule or the morning schedule, but those are usually the entry level positions that are open. So I would let it be known that you are looking for work and be willing to take whatever is available.
Absolutely. You got to make it plain. You got to tell them what you want, no doubt.
I just have a question real quick, because I'm curious. We were talking about this at work the other day, that our company, because of COVID, I mean, the internships are non-existent, and we haven't started them back up at Nexstar. And I said, that kind of was our funnel for employees. And I'm just curious if everybody's company is opening their doors again to interns, because we're not. And I feel bad because I am contacted in the last couple of years. I've got to tell them, I don't know what I can do to help you. We have no interns. And then when they changed the interns from being non-paid to paid, there were a lot of restrictions that were put in place on that too. So the internship opportunities have shrunk, if not completely gone away, for a lot of people. And I know that's how I got my first job. I don't know, are you all seeing it on your end? And I don't know what to tell people, because, and again, anyone on here, you reach out to me, LinkedIn, you can, on my social media, whatever. I am always ready to help and coach people. And I have former interns who've been at several stations now, and they always stay in touch, send me their tapes, so their video, their reels. But I don't know what to tell people now that are reaching out to me. I'm even trying to get a school group from my kids' high school to come in and give them a tour. And my boss has said, no, we're not ready yet. We can't have big groups of people. So it feels like that door to exposing people to the business has really closed.
You can do
For now.
virtual internships. We have virtual internships and interns who are working directly with our consumer unit, investigative, our race and culture reporter, and they do research and make phone calls from their dorm rooms. We have a local student who's in college in New York, and she's from Chicago, but she's in New York, and she's doing the internship from there. So it's not the same experience, but they are working directly with reporters and making connections there. And then when I have meetings with the consumer I team once a week, they'll say, oh, can the intern come? And then that's a good way to make the connection with the intern. And I mean, Zoom meetings.
Yeah. And Cameron adds in here.
Yeah.
And Cameron adds in here that he actually had to go for a part-time or freelance job because of the lack of internships that were out there. So he's working to kind of make that his internship in a sense. Yeah.
Brandon, that is another avenue that's open right now, is that because there are so many people kind of leaving the business and there's this huge turnover within the ranks, even in large markets like ours, when you see like a writer position open, don't be afraid to maybe put your name out there. Contact someone within the newsroom or the hiring manager and say, hey, you know what? I have a passion for news. I'm a good writer and I have some stuff to learn, but don't let that dissuade you from not picking me. I'm okay with working an overnight shift a couple of days a week to learn the business. And that might be a great way. Instead of doing that internship, you actually get a job. And that can lead to even more opportunities. And imagine you're a senior, junior in college, and you're working at a major market TV station, even a couple of days a week as a writer.
Yeah, I would just say look for those like associate producer jobs or, an entry-level producer job. Look for web jobs. There are a lot of entry-level web jobs. But I mean, Adrienne, we're in the same boat in that we haven't had interns for years, hoping to bring them back in the fall. But that is a big gap, where 2 years where students haven't had that exact same experience. That being said, everybody's in the same boat. And so, we're all finding our way.
Absolutely. We got about 10 minutes left, so I want to get through as many questions as we can here. This next one is for Jessie. It's from Gabriel. They say, I'm a senior at UW-Madison studying journalism and political science. What advice do you have for deciding whether you want to try reporting or producing and possibly transitioning from producing to reporting and vice versa?
Well, if you're taking classes, TV classes, you're probably getting exposure to both. And so you really just have to kind of think to yourself, what do I enjoy being on camera? Do I like being behind the scenes better? There are, some hybrid roles out there, but in general, you may start, you can always veer too, right? Like, it's not like this is your path for the rest of your life. You can start one way, and if it doesn't feel right, you can go another way. But to hone those skills, you might want to just, as you're in college, figure out which one do I think I really like, and then dive in there. With that idea that college is all about sampling. So if you're in your TV classes, you want to, raise your hand and say, hey, I'd love to report on that, or I'd love to produce that, and just see how it feels. And then, I think everybody would agree here, there are more producer jobs available than on-air jobs. Producers are at a premium right now. So if you would like to be a producer and you have good writing skills, you can write your own ticket, no pun intended, and get a job almost immediately. Not saying that you couldn't on-air wise, there are just fewer of those jobs, especially if you're more specialized like sports or weather. There are fewer of those jobs, or entertainment. Some of it depends on that too. If you just are like, I really love TV and I want to get a job, then I probably would suggest, if you want a job immediately out of college, you go the producer route, unless you're, hey, I was a person who wanted to be on air, and, I was going to fight and scratch and claw until I got that first job. I drove around the state with my resume tape, during spring break of my senior year. So I totally get that end of it too. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Absolutely. Good answer.
Brandon?
Yes.
Real quick, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was, the more you can do, the more you can do. So for that person, like, don't produce or be a reporter. Produce and report and try anchoring and do digital. Like, the more you can do, the more options you will have.
Yeah. Be LeBron James. Do it all. Triple double, no assists. That's what it's all about. Be a jack of all trades. Okay, this question from Lenita Brooks. This is going to go to Sean. Sean, how do you deal with the pressures of making deadlines when out covering a story?
It's been 25 years since I first started to be a reporter, right? And the business has changed so much in that time, where we went from a linear traditional newscast where it was appointment TV. You watch the 6 and 10 o'clock news, to now where it's like a multiverse, right? And so in that time, I have seen deadlines change where you had to have a package at 6 and you had to have a package for 10. And now it's like bits and pieces. It's almost, even if you're on just kind of a random story, it almost starts coming out like breaking news, where you get this piece of info, and you're at like a city council meeting and you're waiting for one specific thing and something else happens. You're live tweeting what you are covering at city council that day. And then you're taking all those bits and pieces and kind of merging them into a story that goes onto the web or goes on air. And so the deadlines have changed a lot. And yes, there is pressure because, we're working sometimes with ourselves, sometimes with a producer and a photographer, an editor, and you have to take all these different personalities and kind of work with them to get to that goal. And then you have to not only take your deadline into account, but the deadline of the person who has to edit your piece here in Chicago. So, you're putting all these things together. So yeah, there is pressure, and you just kind of get used to it, right? You kind of get used to the rhythm of where you need to be at what time. But I can imagine if I was coming out of college now and working in the job that I have now, like now I can kind of do it and it feels okay. I can't imagine what it was like, because I remember my first live shot and I was shaking like a leaf, thinking, oh my God, what if I screw up? It's almost like, well, if I screw up, I just keep on going now. But a lot of that, a lot of the pressure that you have even doing a live shot is the pressure that you feel when you're on deadline. And the more you do, the less it's going to be an issue for you, because you get into the rhythm like you do with anything else. Like when you have X amount of hours that you have to study in a day, like when you first take that role on as a college freshman, you're like, how am I ever going to get this done? By the time you get to your junior and senior year, you're like, I can get that done. That's no problem. You get to learn the rhythm. And that's what it is after a while of dealing with all the deadlines.
Absolutely. Repetition is everything.
Yep.
This next question from Kaylee will go to Matt. Matt, if you're willing to share, what are some of the mistakes you've made in the industry and what did you learn from them?
I don't know. Courtney, do you want to give that list? Listening to Sean talk about the first job, like everything I had done before Pop Sugar was all taped, and then we did this live show, and I was the main anchor, and I was petrified. I was so petrified, and I would practice the prompter in my room at night. I'd read the New York Times aloud. And I still suck at the prompter. I still mess up. Like just the other day, Courtney and I were filming and I kept missing one word of I'd say down instead of download. But the lesson is, it's not if you're gonna mess up, you're gonna mess up. Everyone in this box is messed up. In one of these boxes is messed up, but it's how you react and how comfortable you can be with yourself, and don't beat yourself up over it. You're going to mess up a name. Sorry, Mike, I mess up names all the time. You're going to have.
I do as well. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have issues. I don't think I've done anything super awful. But there's things in the moment where, I guess Will Smith, I just interviewed Will Smith and I messed up his co-star's name. And I've done a million red carpets, and I was interviewed, and I mess up his co-star's name in front of Will Smith. Will Smith starts dogging on me.
This is pre-slap.
Pre-clap.
Yeah,
Pre-clap.
Once you said Will Smith, I was like, wait.
But here's the quick lesson. I was so hard on myself. And I've been doing this for 15 years now. I was so upset. I was like, can't believe you're still doing these stupid mistakes. You didn't study hard enough. And then Will Smith goes and does that on, national TV and smacks someone. So it was just a lesson. I was like, okay, dude, we are all on the same page. We are all in different points pushed to like do something silly or do something wrong. And you just got to roll with it. And hopefully you put your best foot forward the next time.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Okay, next question here from Ariana. This one is going to go to Courtney. So Courtney, what market number range can you expect to begin your career if you have a master's in broadcast journalism?
Oh, I don't think you can expect anything. Okay, don't expect anything. I can tell you that I feel that my master's degree, and it was from Medill, and I am from Chicago, and I do think that opened doors for me. And that's where I'll end the sentence. But I don't think you can expect anything. I started in Champaign, Illinois. I realized I was very lucky to do so. It's driving distance to Chicago, and it's not that small of a market. It's felt small to me because I'm from Chicago, but it's in the whole scheme of the markets, it's not that small. So I was very fortunate. But I don't think you can expect anything. I think what I did when I was getting jobs is I did kind of like what I did for colleges, like, markets that you feel like you could get into, and then markets that are in the middle, and then like your reach. That's how I did it. What did you want to add?
I'm so sorry, Courtney. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to add to you. I went to Columbia for my master's, and I started out as a reporter, and I thought, I went to Columbia. I went to Boston. I'm starting in New York. No one's going to stop. And you're all laughing because it did not start that way. I was in Syracuse, which, like you, is not that small of a market, but I was one-man banding. My second job, I said, there's no way I'm one-man banding. I went to Columbia. I went to Princeton, waiting for my big job, and I one-man banded in the next job. And it was in Providence, Rhode Island. Matthew, I think you applied to the Road Show that I recognized.
That was my real star. Were you working at the Road Show?
I had just started there when you auditioned for the Road Show. Or no, I think for a year. So you auditioned with my friend Mariah.
That's really what changed my life. That I didn't get into all that here, but like that job changed my life.
Yeah, and you just never know, right? But at every stage, I was like, oh, I'm gonna make it. And I one-man banded for 7 years, and people are shocked to hear that. Again, and I'm still, I just moved for a job 3 months ago. So it took me 15, 16 years to get to market 3, and I'm not on air anymore. So you can't expect anything. Nobody in this business, yes, like Courtney, it opened doors. I think it's still open doors. I think people are still like, oh, wow, it legitimizes you. Yeah. But it's not going to give you anything.
Right. I completely agree. Now, what I can say is from my start, I chose my next market strategically. I chose Orlando because it has crazy news, really important for politics. It's got a major sports team. It has Disney. So I knew that would be a rich community with news. So I knew that would kind of tee me up to go. I ultimately wanted to get back to Chicago, and it ultimately did tee me up to get to Chicago.
Absolutely. Final question here. This one's going to be for Adrienne. It's from Gabriel. What can someone in high school do right now to get experience in the news industry?
Well, being that we discussed the internship thing is a little limited. I think in high school, you want to be aware of your surroundings. You want to be aware of newsmakers and news, and just look for stories. I'm constantly I'm our features reporter. I was constantly finding stuff on Facebook and finding things on social media, that little human interest stories. I think if you can find those stories, that's a huge part of your job. If you want to report, I don't know, or even just being a producer, I'm constantly looking for good content. And I think that's even a bigger thing now with social media. But for high school, I think, as everyone said, the more you can do, the more valuable you are. So learn the skills, learn, how to edit, learn to shoot, learn to, deliver, writing. Again, I will preach that all day long. Writing is key. But that's at high school, I think that's it. And if you are interested at this level, that really kind of keep your eyes open, be open to any opportunity. And I think the biggest advice to have to everybody is to realize how small the business is and don't ever burn a bridge with anybody. And I think probably everybody here can say yes to that, because it will come back to you. Your reputation. Throughout my career, I've had crazy instances of people that come back around, you've worked with them, whatever. You will see people again. So watch what you do. Do never, ever burn a bridge. Right, Afia? I worked with most of you guys, but that is some advice I would give to people beginning, looking to get their foot in the door here. People you meet, always have your best face on, because they will be your boss one day, or your coworker. You never know.
Absolutely.
That's my cue as the producer to wrap this up. We're over 4 minutes. So thank you all for your patience. You guys have been great. You guys have been a fantastic panel. Everyone has been asking if they could have contact information for all of you. What we've done is Rebecca has put her email address in the chat here with the Natus group. So if you have questions for these panelists, email Rebecca. Rebecca will reach out and see if we can connect you with them. We just don't want to publicize everyone's contact information. I want to thank all of you for giving part of your Saturday morning and mid-afternoon to answer these questions and to be a part of this panel. We thank you all so much. And in true producer form, I'm going to end this because we're over.
You are 5 minutes heavy. What are you doing?
Yes, in a newscast, we'd be off air right now. But you guys were dropping some gems, and I kept saying give a little bit more time. And then I'm like trying to message Rebecca, like, can we stretch this? But no, you guys, thank you so much. This was everything and more than we possibly imagined. So have a good day. This session will post on the Natus website and next month, so you guys can watch it back and listen to any gems. And again, copy Rebecca's email address, send any questions to her, and she'll try her best to either get those answered for you or to connect them to the person that you want to reach. Thank you all again. Have a good Saturday.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
See you later.
Thank you.